Hello, hello. Hey, what's up, Selena? What's up, Ray? What's up, Amphi? Oh, it's good to be back. I missed you guys. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome, awesome. How are y'all doing? How's everybody doing? How's everybody been the last week? Ah, Nico Rume, thank you so much for that follow. Really appreciate that. And welcome to the stream. Hello, hello. Also, Althea, Laloon, and Ultima Freya. I think you guys followed the channel while I was offline, but if you are here already, thank you guys very much for that follow. Really appreciate that. Hey, Aramore, how's it going? Everything's going good. Everything's going good. Yeah, I missed you guys last week. I wasn't able to stream, but it's good to be back, you know? And I'm excited to finally get to be able to do... Oops, I just realized Prominence is still showing. Oops. Hiding that address there for now. But yeah, no, it's good to be back. I got some good stuff done while I couldn't stream. Still lots more planned, but yeah, I'm excited that we finally get to do this stream, because I know this has been something that's been pretty highly requested by a lot of people. So I think I'm gonna give us like a few minutes here for people to kind of trickle in, because understandably they might have been in other streams, or maybe they're just seeing some of the messages going out. If any of you, by the way, want to have your friends come and follow along, or if you want to post it in your Discords or whatever, I'm always happy. I appreciate retweets or reposts to help people know that we're doing this kind of stuff. Because yeah, really, this is for the people, for anybody who might want to learn this. And I don't know who all those people are, but you might. So help me out if you can. Message your friends, let them know, and we will get started in a short bit here. I'm gonna probably repeat this like maybe once or twice here before we actually get full on started. But just so anybody, for anybody who's joining us and is not aware right now, today's stream is going to be all about a beginner's guide for housing. And when I say beginner's guide, I mean I'm truly going to go from, I'm assuming that you have literally just gotten your apartment and never touched housing before. So we're gonna just take it from the very basics all the way up till you will know all the basic glitches and everything you need to know to get started. So yeah, so for anybody who has never done housing, this is absolutely the stream for you. Or maybe if you want a refresher or something, this is also the stream for you. And heck, maybe you do know housing, but maybe you'll learn something new. Maybe a little tip, a little trick that you didn't know about before. And then Wednesday, I'm also going to continue this mini-series. And that on Wednesday, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into some of the more maybe intermediate to maybe even a little advanced techniques. So today's stream is going to really focus on trying to be really, really accessible, right? So taking, again, absolute beginners from I know nothing about housing to, okay, I think I understand all the fundamentals that I need to just get started. And then Wednesday, we'll continue anything we haven't finished yet. And then we will also touch upon some of the more advanced mechanics when it comes to layering and, you know, just coming up with concepts and maybe, yeah, just a bit more advanced techniques and tricks and stuff. But I don't want to overwhelm anybody right from the start. So that's why we're gonna take it from zero, starting here. And then this way too, the idea here is that if you have friends in the future who want to learn housing and they want this more long form tutorial format where they can kind of follow along, then you can always refer them to this video, and then that way they could always start from ground zero and then build their way up into, you know, whatever they would like to do. So yeah. Nikurume came across this on the Twitter feed. Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, glad you could join us. I'm glad you found me. Yeah, I saw a couple people retweeting it and everything, so I'm very thankful for that. I just want this message to get out to as many people as it can, you know. So whoever this could benefit, I want them to be able to see it. And Vreeze, hello, Vreeze. You'll be lurking since it's pretty late. Thank you. Hey, thank you. Lurking or not, doesn't matter. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate that. Always happy. Lurkers are fine. No worries. Lurkers, you guys are the backbones of all streams in many ways, so I appreciate you. But, that being said, if you are lurking and you'd like to say hello, say hello. I don't bite. I'd love to meet you. You'll find everybody here in my stream is very welcoming, and we're all really supportive and just want to create cool things together and help others learn how to create cool things together. So, okay, so here we go. I'm going to get started in kind of explaining how this is going to go. And we might, again, kind of come back to this a little bit if I find that a whole bunch of people are joining and really confused. But, so basically, the general gist of what we're going to be doing today is going to be going over this lesson plan, okay? So, as I said, the point of this stream is we are going to take everybody from I've never housed before, I just got an apartment, to hopefully by the end of this stream, you know all of the basics of what what goes into streaming. So, sorry, not streaming, into housing. Yes. Apologize, a little bit nervous here. Astronautical. Oh, astronautical. Hey, that's okay if you're lurking. Happy to have you here. So, yeah, for anybody who's just joining us, this is going to be our lesson plan for the day. And for anybody who would like to follow along, by the way, here is the basic items that you're going to need, okay? So the thing about today is, since I'm taking it from absolute ground zero and going all the way up, I also wanted to make this as accessible as possible, so everything, I'm going to do my absolute best to try and only use NPC vendor items today. I think that's completely possible, especially to start out. So really, all you need to start housing is these items right here, okay? In fact, maybe I'll switch over to this one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, so to start, look, everything you need to do everything I'm about to talk about is going to be this stuff right here. And you can get all of this from a housing NPC. Specifically, the first item on the list there, the Hakonin and /steward permit. If you go to any of the housing wards, the major housing wards, and you find the housing merchant, you can buy a Hakonin /steward permit, which is basically a housing NPC that you can place inside your house, right? And it's a little NPC vendor. And from this vendor, we can pretty much buy everything that we're gonna need on the stream today, okay? So if you wanna follow along, then I encourage you to right now run over to whatever housing ward you have your house or apartment in, everything we're going to do is going to be done in an apartment, but this can easily be done in any size house. FC room, small, medium, large. But yeah, so pick up a Hokonen/steward permit, and from that Hokonen, we will actually buy all of the other items. So, yeah, very accessible, very cheap to do. So there's like next to no barrier to entry to get started with this, okay? Something I also would like to point out, though, is if you want to spend a touch more money, some other alternatives to some of these items that I've listed here that might be useful for you to pick up are these. Okay, so if you're completely new to housing, this may not all make a ton of sense yet, but I think as we start to explain more, you'll start to see what I'm talking about. But basically, these alternatives are all crafted, or you can purchase them off the market board, and they basically they do the same thing as the NPC housing items, except they offer a little bit more functionality. Okay, and I'll explain once we're actually inside the apartment and we're actually building. I'll explain why these are some good alternatives, but I just kind of wanted to point these out. Let me see if I can make sure I get rid of this message. Ray, if you're in there, can you take out that message that's right there? Thank you. Perfect, perfect. Okay. So, here we go. So, everybody... And also, hello, Liara. Hi. Glad you could join us. All right, so we're gonna get started here. So that's the housing starter kit. We just went item number 1 there. For anybody, oh, actually, you know, I think I should introduce myself really quick, just to kind of give some people a bit of an understanding of who I am. So, in case you are not aware, hello, this is me. I am Noah Saitoshii, and I've been playing Final Fantasy for a couple years now. I started in April 2020 as the pandemic started. And then I got into housing about, I think, like maybe June or so of that year. And basically, so I just wanted to put that out there because then sort of everything that you see on my Twitter or everything that you see here, like in this room, this is a room that we built actually on stream. So you can see how we built this entire space that I'm standing in right now in the Twitch VODs and also on my YouTube channel, which I'm working on right now. But yeah, so basically, I just want to like let people know, like, I mean, it's not like I've been playing this since its inception or something, you know, this is all stuff that you can pick up pretty quickly. And yeah, anybody can do this. So I've been doing that housing since about mid 2020 or so. And yeah, anybody can pick this up and anyone can learn this. Okay, so first things first, let us go over to my apartment. Let's go to G-pose here, and we're gonna walk over to my apartment. If you would like to follow along, this is the time to go to wherever you want to build. Hopefully you have an apartment or an FC room at the very least. In case you don't, and you've never like looked into how does one go about getting an apartment or FC room, you have to be level 50, and you have to be, I believe it's second lieutenant in your grand company. So this does require that you will have to do a little bit of MSQ, in order to get to this point where you can get an apartment and FC room. But I assume that probably most of you have gotten to that point. I'm sorry, if you have not, then come and you can always rewatch the VOD later. But basically, yeah, once you are able to buy an apartment or an FC room, you can go to any one of the housing wards. Actually, let me show you that. So if you needed to buy an apartment, you could come to the housing wards, go to the apartment building, and then you're going to come into the apartment complex and then talk to the apartment caretaker, and it's going to be 500,000 gil, which is really not that much. It's very attainable. And you get to keep your apartment forever. So that's great. And FC rooms are actually even cheaper. They are, I believe it's 350 or 300,000 gil for an FC room. So you can just, if you are part of an FC, then you should be able to buy an FC room in your FC house. And it's a great way to get started with housing. Okay. So once you have an apartment, you are going to get a big box. It looks like this. Okay. It looks very similar to this. I switched out the chandelier here. It's not the default one. I just wanted something that has a bit of a lower profile so that we can really see the whole space here. But basically, you will get this big blank box. And there will be nothing in it, so I have these 3 items down. This is a summoning bell to talk to my retainers. This is 2 housing NPCs. And I put those there. But you will be given a completely blank box and 100 item slots to work with. Okay, so if you have never done housing before, then just a quick thing about housing in this game is you are limited by item slots. Okay, so different size houses that you own have different slot limits, and that means how many items you can place in a given apartment build, okay, or a given housing build. So apartments have 100 slots. Small houses have 200 slots, medium houses have 300 slots, and large houses have 400 slots. This is on the inside, by the way. A garden is kind of the garden space of houses is a bit of a separate topic. So, in this case, right, these 3 things, summoning bell, and then 2 different NPCs, that's 3 item slots. So IB now have 97 slots to work with, okay? As you're getting started, though, I wouldn't worry too much about item slots, to be honest. I mean, the big thing is more just that we want to teach the basics and kind of get familiar with, just how do you even accomplish some of the more complex things that you probably have seen people do, right, within the housing space. I also realized I want to do a few quick disclaimers before I start building here. So one is that I am going to be using mouse and keyboard for this. This is what I've always used to build, and so I do apologize. I do not actually have experience using a controller, so I don't know all of the hotkeys and like how exactly one configures the controller to do some of these things. There are lots of tutorials on YouTube, though, where people have shown how to do stuff with controller. So don't worry, hopefully you can still follow along with your own controller, but if you do get a little bit confused, I do apologize. I just don't know the controller settings, and so I would really fumble through it if I tried to teach it that way. So I'm going to be doing this mouse and keyboard. Okay. I also want to make it clear that all the techniques that I'm going to show today, I did not discover these techniques. I am merely a student as well. So I don't take any credit for the glitches and the techniques and stuff that I'm going to be showing here. I'm going to try to kind of give a shout out to if I kind of know where it might have come from, or some of the places where I learned some stuff. But yeah, I just want to make it clear, this is very much a learning thing. I want to just teach people and present the information in a way that I've had requested of me by people of my community and stuff. They wanted to see a sort of longer form, follow along format for learning some of these housing glitches. There are, like I said, as I said, there's other ways to learn this. There are very truncated, short glitch run-through videos where, Akrai on YouTube, has a wonderful, like, I think it's like a 9-minute video where she just kind of really quickly, really succinctly goes through all the techniques. And then there's some other ones also by Crush and Defeat Media, as well as Shay Cloudbank. Those are two of like a bit of the like OG tutorial people about housing. So they also have some fantastic tutorials. So yeah, in case you do want any sort of further tutorial material or like a quick refresher, you may want to check those people out. Okay, so to get started now, building, I'm going to assume you're in your apartment and you at least have access to the housing NPC person here, right? I said, please, if you could, go buy a Hakonin permit. And let me just show what that looks like. It should be from the housing merchant. In any major housing ward, you can buy this, a Hakonin permit. It can also be called a steward permit. It's the same thing. But basically, we want this person because they provide us the ability to buy a bunch of housing items within the house, so we don't actually have to leave the apartment, rather. I also have a junkmonger permit here because junkmongers allow you to buy dyes. And we're not going to get too crazy into like color theory or anything like that today, but it's just one of those things of, if you're going to already be at the housing merchant and buying a Hakonin permit, it's nice to pick up a junkmonger permit. It doesn't matter. It can be a 1, 2, or 3. That only matters on how visually the person looks. And you can look up housing NPCs and see how they all look and compare them and find the optimal one for you if you want. But the basic gist is, I think that what I'm trying to get you here is like your basic housing starter kit, right? From which you can do most things that you'd want to do on a basic level. So you'd want to buy housing items from the Hakonin/steward, and then you're going to want to buy some basic dyes from the junkmonger to color your furnishings. Okay? And the basic furnishings we want to buy then, once we have this Hakonin, come into the Hakonin or your steward, and you are going to want to go to partitions, walls, decorations. Okay. And you're going to want to scroll down until you find stage panel and pick up at least one, but I would recommend picking up, maybe 2 or 3 even, because you will use many a stage panel in your time building. So it's very useful to potentially have more than just one of them. But to start, all you need is technically 1. Then also you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom pretty much, and then you're going to buy an antique wall shelf and a round wooden loft. Okay? So once you're done, your housing inventory should look something like, well, you should have at least these 3 items: stage panel, round wooden loft, antique wall shelf. Also, really quick, I just want to give a shout out. The Slimologist, thank you so much for that tier 1 sub. 2 months subscribed. Thank you so much, man. Really, really appreciate that. And Reiki, hey, welcome, welcome. Glad you could make it. Yes, Reiki, yeah. So a Riviera wall shelf works as well. So this is a good point. So what I'm showing right here is the basic starting kit for if you are buying these items from the housing NPC, right? And I say this because maybe everybody is a little strapped on Gil or something like that, so they don't want to buy stuff from the market board. But yes, the classic setup though of what people use to build is these 3 items. It's a stage panel, a Riviera wall shelf, and then a wooden loft. Okay, so these 3 things: stage panel, Riviera wall shelf, wooden loft. And those are the Riviera wall shelf and the wooden loft are craftable and or purchasable from the market board. So you can absolutely use those as well. Actually, in reality, there's like a number of items that kind of can work for some of these things. But these are like the optimal things that you can go for. So Housing Toolkit 101. Yeah, you can have these 3: stage panel, Riviera wall shelf, wooden loft, or you could do antique wall shelf, round wooden loft, stage panel. I guess it's maybe worth pointing out, and just in case anybody is like, truly, truly new to housing, which I did say that I would explain it from that perspective. If you go into your apartment and you don't know where the housing menu is, then you can go over down here to the little like circle menus, and if you go to social, then you can find housing. Okay. Alternatively, you can find the action. I believe there's an action if you go to, what is it? Is it like here? Let's see here. There we go, social. Okay, so also if you wanted to keybind this to something to open the housing menu, which I recommend you do, to quickly access this, if you're going to be doing housing a lot, right? You can hit P on a keyboard. I think the default is P, but it basically opens the actions and traits menu. And then you can go to the main commands and social, and then you can grab the little icon for housing and you can drag it to whatever hotbar you want. And if you create a shortcut that way, then it might be easier for you to access it as we go forward. So that's like how I have it here, right? I have a little custom hotbar, and so I can just pull up my housing menu, and then I have a way to just kind of close it and hide it as well. And that actually leads me into the first thing that we're going to talk about today, which is how to set up just the basic keybinds for housing, basically. So in order to do housing the way that, in order to do housing where we start getting into the glitches and start getting a little more complex with it, we need to just do a little bit of basic setup here, okay? So in addition to finding where you have the housing button, right, to quickly access the housing menu, I also want you to open up your keybinds section. So if you hit escape, if you're on keyboard, you can go to the keybinds section, or I think you can also, if you go here, system, keybind, okay? So the little circle menu, system, keybind. Either way gets you there. It doesn't really matter how you arrive there. You can hit escape and go there, whatever. Once you're here at the keybind menu, okay, what you're going to want to do is two different sets of keybinds. So you're going to go to system, keybind, system, right? And what you're going to find is you need to keybind something for display subcommands here, okay? And you're going to want to do confirm. Okay, so I have these on my keyboard. The way I have my keyboard set up, I'm using delete and insert because I have those extra keys on the keyboard, but you can bind it to whatever you want. Whatever is easiest for you to remember. If you have like a number pad or something, that works great. If you got a macro mouse or a, whatever you want to use. So all these key bindings, I'm showing you what you need to have a key bound to, but it's up to you what actual key that is. Okay, so if you have something bound for display subcommands and confirm, and I would recommend that you put these next to each other if possible, because this will become apparent as we do our basic glitch, but basically you're going to be hitting those keys one after another. Okay, so ideally put them next to each other, don't have them across the table or something. Okay, the second set of keybinds that I want you to do is go to keybind again and controller this time. And so when you're in controller, you'll want to find this L2 button and R2 button. And I realized we might need to enable controller. So first, if you do see this menu, if you're able to see this keybind controller, L2 and R2, and bind it to something. Again, probably ideally next to each other. This is going to help us rotate objects without having to click off of them. Again, some of these, if you're new to housing, they may not make sense why I'm telling you this right at this moment, but it will become very apparent in a moment here when I show you how this works. Okay? Gamepad, not controller. Okay, Reiki, I'm not 100% sure how that works out. Let's see. Let me make sure. System configurations, I believe. I think, let me just see. Okay, so enable. Okay, I apologize. I don't know where this, to toggle on. I think they're near the same thing. But, shoot. Really quickly, hold on. Let me just make sure, I think. I just want to confirm where this is, in case someone is really stumped by this. So, let's see. Okay, so basically though, if you can enable the use of the controller functions, is what you're going to be trying to do here. Enable. I activated this so long ago that I don't quite remember how it goes. But in my case, like, I mean, again, I've activated mouse mode. I said this earlier for anybody who's just joined, but I use mouse and keyboard, and so I apologize. I don't know all of the commands on how to do this if you're on gamepad/controller. So I do apologize. I think pretty much everything that we're going to talk about, though, you can still do without any trouble, for the most part. This is just like this rotate thing that I just talked about with the L2 and the R2. It's more of a quality of life thing. It's not super necessary, but it's just massively helpful. Okay? So anyway, okay, so hopefully everybody got those keybinds, right? So you have display subcommand, confirm, and then you have the R2 and L2 on the controller enabled. Okay, so what are we going to use these for? Okay, so first things first, let me show you. If you open up your housing menu, right? And if you pull out your stage panel, right? So just grab your stage panel from your inventory. If in your housing menu, right? Here's the little housing menu where you can see all the items that you have. This is storage, and this is your currently placed items within your house. On the storage tab, if you don't have this checked, display preview, check this, okay? This is important because we want to be able to preview the items so that way when we click like this, if we click an item that's in storage, it just gets displayed here, okay? So make sure we have display preview enabled. I would personally also turn this off because what this does, item bind prompt, basically just means that if you have never used an item before, as in like you bought it just fresh off the market board or off the NPC, if you have that checked, it will, using an item for the first time and actually placing it down in your house will bind the item to you, okay? And basically that item bind prompt is just going to, every single time you put a new item down, it will tell you, hey, by the way, if you place this down, it's going to bind it to you, which gets kind of annoying. So I would recommend just turning it off right now. But if you like the warning, then, you know, it's up to you. Okay. So, okay. Showing you what we just did with the keybinds. So what we did with the keybinds is we have, let's take our stage panel out, okay? And one way to do rotating an object would be you just place the item down. So you can pick the item up and you can put it down, right? There's this move select tool, right? This allows you to move the item around. And then you have this rotate tool, which allows you to click and rotate the item around, right? So the problem here, though, is that you only have selection of one of these at a time, right? So you start out and, yeah, you're kind of moving this around and you go, oh shoot, wait, it's not actually aligned. You have to stop what you're doing, put the item down, go to the rotate thing, click the item, rotate it, and then come back to the move, right? And that is just kind of unnecessary. You don't need to do all of that because we just did those keybinds for the rotate with the L2 and the R2. To explain, for those on a controller, I don't actually think you need to keybind this because it probably automatically does it for you. And what we with the mouse and the keyboard are doing is we are tapping into the controller's use of this function, which is that if you use R2 and L2 on a controller, it will rotate the object. Okay, so here I'm picking it up, right? I have a mouse and keyboard. I picked up my item. I'm on the move objects thing. But if I hit those two keys that I selected, the object rotates. And I'm still holding on to the object, okay? Do you see how that works, right? How that's different? So this is very, very useful because this means that as we're doing all these next things, if you ever find your item is misaligned, you can always just start rotating it using your little hotkeys there while you're still moving the object around, and you don't have to toggle back and forth so many times between them. Okay? So far, does this all make sense to everybody? Occasionally I'm going to kind of ask for feedback and whatnot, but also if at any point during this one of you guys gets super stumped on something, or you think I went too fast and you'd like me to either clarify or something, just let me know. Say something in the chat. Okay. Okay, now that we have that, so now we know we can move an object, we can rotate an object, and we can do them at the same time even, right? Okay. So now that we have those two things, we are ready to start understanding some basics of housing glitches. So I think like a good starting thing might be, let's come back here to the housing NPC, okay? And let's just buy a couple basic items so that we're going to use to build with, and we're going to use as example items, okay? So let's go to table. Let's get a table. Let's grab like something just simple, like a glade table. Let's see, glade table, Riviera glade table or something, right? Something nice and simple. Okay. You can choose whichever one you want. And then also we are going to pick up go to the lighting tab and just grab a glade lantern. So scroll down here, there should be something called a glade lantern. Grab one of those. Okay. So what you should now have is your 3 starting items that we originally started with, and now we have a table and a lantern. Actually, I realize we might as well get a window as well since we're buying stuff right now. Hakonen, go to the partitions and wall decorations, I believe. This should work. And grab a cracked arch window. That'll work. Okay. So it's this item, cracked arch window. All from the Hakonen vendor NPC. So Riviera table, glade lantern, cracked arch window. Good to go. We now have just a table, so like a ground furnishing. We have a tabletop item, and then we have a wall mounted item. Okay. Okay. So on a very, very basic level, technically, you can completely build everything in housing and never use a glitch or never use any of the more advanced techniques, and you can build some incredible stuff. right? So on the most basic level, you can put a table down and you can put like a lantern on top of it or something. And you can put couches and you can do all kinds of wonderful things and then put fake windows in, right? So what I've just done there is, yeah, I mean, just this is me just basically placing down the items. I didn't use any sort of fancy mechanics or anything like that. I just put the items down. And already right there, I mean, you can create some really nice pieces. I think a fundamental thing, even on the most basic level of housing, something that you'll quickly pick up on, I think, but you also want to be thinking about is that items don't really have a real physical collision box, right? So for example, this window that I put up here, I can push it and it'll overlap with some other stuff, right? So there you go, like I've kind of hidden part of the window there, right? And this starts, when you start doing this kind of thing, this allows you to do some creative stuff. So for example, right there, now I look like I have a smaller window because I hid part of it, right? So I think like on a very, very basic level of housing, this already is a very, very powerful way to look at stuff. Just this idea of overlapping things and changing their appearance based off of showing or hiding certain aspects of them, right? Or highlighting certain aspects of them in some cases, right? So in some cases, perhaps, you will have like maybe multiple of these things, right? And look, if I was to hide the top and the bottom, I have an even smaller window, or like a really narrow window like that, right? So I think fundamentally, that's kind of the mindset you need to always be in when you're housing, is just this idea of always thinking of items, not just at face value per se, but I think it's a really good mentality to start training this muscle of thinking outside the box when it comes to what an item can be. So, this window, yes, it looks like this and it's about this size, but oh, I really only like the bottom. What can I do with that then? Well, I can block it. Okay, right? How could I, get the lighting to work just right with this table? This is all, here we go. Or even like a double loft. There's like 2 levels now to my loft, right? Just by adding this one a little bit lower. Okay, so again, I for anybody who's like really advanced with housing, I know that I'm, probably saying stuff that you maybe just picked up right away or you've, long since known, but I'm going from the perspective of someone who has never done housing before, and trying to not only just literally tell them what you have to do, but also sort of the best practices and the mindset, and kind of hopefully make it feel very approachable and understandable that you see some of these really extravagant builds out there, and it can be really daunting. Like, it can be extremely, understandably daunting, and thinking like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can ever do something like that. But I want to tell you right now, you absolutely can. Okay? I mean, with even just the stuff that I'm going to show you today, there are infinite possibilities of what you can do. So do not think that somehow any of this is like above you, okay? The housing is very much for everybody, and anybody can learn this. So again, even on a basic level, we haven't even touched glitches yet, and there's already a wealth of stuff that you could do with just what we've just talked about. I've seen some incredible builds that use no glitches, and they look fantastic. So don't let that stop you. Also, Larinha, thank you very much for that follow. Glad to have you with us. Okay, so now this being said, we have all the basics of, like, I guess maybe what they gave you in the game per se, like how Square Enix initially coded housing into the game. So now we're going to start getting into how do people do all of those crazy layered, intricate builds where they are building scenes and environments and items that don't exist in the game anywhere. How do they do that? How are they achieving all that effect? Okay, so the most basic of glitches is simply freezing an item in place in midair. This works for tabletop and wall-mounted items. You know what? I realize I'm going a little out. I went a little out of order there. Let's go with the order that I initially said. So we're gonna just do a basic float. This is the most basic float that lets you float anything off the ground. Okay, so if I place a table down. Okay. So we have a table. It's just on the ground. Okay, how you may have seen people putting stuff up in midair, like flying up in the midair. Okay, so how do we do this? What we're gonna do is we are going to put our table down wherever you want, take your stage panel, right? And put it near the table, okay? So put it near the table with the blank flat side looking at the table, okay? So not this side, you don't want all this wooden beams and stuff. You want just the flat side looking at this table, okay? Ideally, it is perpendicular to the table. So, you know, stage panel going this way, table is here in front. It's helpful if you are not already using it, use grid snap. This will allow us to kind of very easily position some stuff. So turn your grid snap on, you can align using the rotate stuff. Get your stage panel in front of your table. Okay. Okay, so now that you have your table and your stage panel, we're gonna push this table up off the ground. The way we're gonna do that, take our round wooden loft. Make sure that your wooden loft is in your inventory, okay? Okay, so now that your loft's in your inventory, pull it out, right? So you're controlling it using the move tool, okay? Make sure that, if you see on my screen, right, do you see how my wood loft clearly overlaps with the table? As I'm having it stick onto the stage panel here. Purple means you can't place it, but anywhere with the orange is gonna be good to go, okay? So with this, if this round wooden loft is able to overlap with the table, what we're gonna do is, okay, put it near the bottom here, right? Now, if I was to just click, nothing will happen. The loft will attach to the stage panel, right? But the table will not float up, okay? However, if I have it in my inventory, my round wooden loft, I line it back up here again. Now here, remember we did those two commands, right? The display sub command menu, and then the confirm, right? So, do you remember what those were? What your keybinds were for those? Because we're about to use them right now, okay? Actually, do we need them for this? Might just be place escape. Yeah. I apologize. I am getting ahead of myself a little bit. You actually don't need those yet. All you need for this one is to find your escape key, okay? So what you're gonna do is take your round wooden loft, overlap it with the table, right? You can find the orange here, okay? And what you're gonna do is clicking and then hitting escape. Okay, so click, which will place the item, the wooden loft on the stage panel, and you're gonna hit escape, okay, to escape out of the menu. And if you've done this right, the table should pop up off the ground, okay? And it's a little bit of a timing thing, but basically it's place escape, right? So just think 1, 2, okay? So place escape, okay? You see that? Do you see how the table popped up off the ground here? For anybody who's following along, were you able to replicate that? Okay. Oh no, Reiki, so did it not, were you not able to place the item and hit escape? Again, I do apologize. I think you were using the controller, so, oh wait, you're using mouse. Love Peace Kitties? No, you're on keyboard. Okay, so here, I'm going to try to show this again. So make sure, do this for me. Make sure that your wooden loft, right, the one that you're holding here, right? So see how it is both completely overlapping on top, cutting like, you know, through the middle of this item. And also make sure it's very low to the ground, right? So like right where it goes purple, go just above where it goes purple and make it orange, right? Okay. Okay, so do you see where the positioning of this, right? It's like sunken almost into the ground, right? Okay. The important part here is that I'm hitting the bottom of this table at least, right? So if I'm way up here, like above the table too much, for some items it will work and it'll be fine, but for other items you really need to hit the bottom, whatever the bottommost part of the item is. There's like some, you know, fancy stuff going on behind the scenes there, but for simplicity's sake, you know, always make sure when you're starting to just try to hit the bottom. Okay, so once you're doing this, again, what you're gonna do is make sure that the targeting thing is orange, and then you're gonna do place escape. And when I say that, I mean click to confirm, and then hit the escape key, right? So if I go place escape, da. Okay. Bro, baby 000 and Love Peace and Kitties, thank you guys both for the follows. I know Love Peace and Kitties, that's you, Reiki, but yeah, thank you for the follow all the same. Okay, so Reiki, were you able to get that to pop up now? Again, this is a little bit of a timing thing where you have to kind of find your rhythm with this, okay? So once you get it, it's going to become muscle memory very quickly. But I know like the first couple times that I tried to float something, I didn't quite seem to have the timing down. But basically this is the basic loft glitch, right? So now that you have popped this thing up once, if you want to keep it moving it upward, right? You would basically do the same thing over and over again and keep nudging it up and up and up, okay? So I'm going to do this a couple times. So pop, right? Go back to indoor furnishing. Select the, I have this selected the return object to the inventory, right? Because you always want to be placing it. Oh, Reiki, in case you're doing it a different way, make sure that the round wooden loft is in your inventory and that you're placing it from there when you're doing this glitch, okay? So inventory, place escape, right? Return to inventory, pull it out again, place escape, okay? Inventory, place escape, okay? Just see how it keeps going up and up and up, right? Okay. Just can't get it. Interesting. So it wasn't popping it up at all for you, Reiki? Are you using, also just to confirm, are you using the same items that I am and they're about in the same position that I'm using them? Ah, okay, yeah, Ray makes a good point. Don't slam escape a bunch of times. It's really like a very purposeful click escape, okay? Like actually I would argue that like it's probably a little slower than you think it is. So it's not like place escape like as fast as you can. It's place escape, okay? You can actually do it relatively slow, like place escape. There we go. Yeah, that's a bit slower than I would normally do it, but like again, I know this is a little tricky for some people because it's, you know, a little bit of a timing thing, and you're probably just getting used to the housing menu and everything. But try keeping at it. Another thing is, I know that the wooden loft is a bit big and maybe a little bit unruly, like a bit hard to maneuver around. So another thing is, you can actually also float and do this exact same technique with the antique wall shelf. So the big difference between the wood loft and the antique wall shelf, right, which is your two main floating tools, the big difference between these two is just the size. Okay, the fact that like this is significantly bigger, so this allows you to float bulky items much more effectively, and or it could allow you to float a whole bunch of items because of how wide it is. Whereas this one is much more of a precision tool, and that's like if you maybe find it easier to just position this thing around, but also sometimes you'll be floating some items in between other items, and you won't want to hit one of them, but you will want to hit the one right next to it. And in this case, you might want something a bit smaller, so you can really like get the exact positioning correct. But the same thing applies. Okay, so I want to clarify a sort of troubleshooting slash mechanism for why this, or what needs to happen to make this work, okay? So if you pull out your rotate tool this one, right? And click the table, right? So if you click the table and you see the little orange spinny circles around here, right? That tells you where the center of this item is, okay? This is important because I know you guys won't necessarily have this item, but here, for example, here is a much bigger and wider item, right? And if you were, like, if I said, point me to the centermost point of this item, right? You might not know exactly where that is. If you need to find the center point, which is important, because what we're about to do, you can always use the rotate tool, and the rotate tool will always be located dead center of the item, okay? No matter how big the item is. So, okay, so why is this important? This is important because the thing that allows an item to be floated upwards is the wooden loft or the antique wall shelf hitting the center point of that item, okay? So on this table, that's not so difficult to understand because there's actually like, I mean, there's a clearly marked like center point. We understand what that is. And I said it has to hit the bottom of the item, right? So think about underneath the table, if you drew a line going straight up and down vertically, right? Like this, and it just, the pole was hitting right there, right through the center of the item, right? Right there, right? So there's a virtual line for you, right? The leftmost edge of this pole, right, is going right pretty much down through the center of this thing, right? This is the point right there. You need to hit this point with your shelf or with your loft, okay? This is important because, check this out, right? If I use my shelf here, I'm gonna show it on an item that's a bit, I guess I can try it on this one. Okay, so if I check my shelf, and I'm like way over here, right? It's intersecting with the table, right? But it's not hitting the center point. So it's not gonna do anything. Nothing's gonna loft. Even though technically it's like overlapping a little bit here, I think I could even get a little closer and it still wouldn't do it because I'm not really hitting the center. Yeah, see, so I'm like, it's intersecting with the table, but it's not hitting the center point of the table, so it will not loft. However, if I go to the center point of the table and I make sure, do you see how now it would intersect with the center point, right? Now if I do the float glitch, it'll pop up, okay? Again, for the sake of simplicity, this table is a very basic, like a square. It's like a box, basically. if you think about it in 3D space. But when you start getting into bigger items like this becomes much more important because, you know, all of this space here will not float. Like if you have your shelves and stuff hitting only this area, the item will not pop up. You have to make sure that it hits over the center point of whatever this item is. So in this case, it has to hit this point if you drew like a big beam up from this point. Okay? Does that point make sense to everybody? Awesome, Crodam7. And also welcome to the stream. I see your first time chatter. Welcome, welcome. Okay. For anyone else following along, did that make sense? Or even just listening along, just did that explanation make sense? I do want to make sure sometimes I'm explaining it how I see it in my brain, but you know, I'm open to hearing if it was confusing, and I can always try to explain it a different way. Yep, hit the center and nothing happens. Absolutely right. And that goes for the big items too, right? So I mean, even if there's this huge item, right? If it's like doing like this, not gonna happen. In fact, it went back down because I closed the menu. So I hit center, pops up. There you go, right? Okay. So here, those of you who are watching along, you might have noticed what just happened there, by the way. So see how here the table's floated up off the ground, right? But now if I hit escape and I exit out of the housing menu, watch what happens. Do you see how the table popped back down to the ground? Okay, so this is very important too. Every item in the game has a minimum float height requirement. What that means is if you are doing this glitch where you're pushing items up off the ground, like in places that they won't normally be, right? So this does not count for wall items and that kind of thing, but this is for all these ground furnishings that we're using this lofting, floating glitch to push off the ground, right? For all of these items must be a certain height off the ground in order for them to be able to actually freeze in place. If they do not meet this minimum floated height, they will just snap back down to the floor. I'm sure if I was a Final Fantasy dev, I could tell you exactly why that was coded that way, but I don't personally know why it's like that. It just simply is. So, and the minimum float height varies per item. There is some level of standardization between certain clusters of items. So for example, you know, like all of the fake walls, right? All of those partitions, like the blank Hingen partition, the blank Riviera partition, blah, blah, blah. Those all have like a similar minimum float height, right? But, you know, between the different tables, between just a whole bunch of stuff, it varies. The rule of thumb basically is that the sort of wider the item, the higher the minimum float height requirement is going to be. And that also affects how fast you can float the item. So understandably, if you are just getting into housing, I may have just lost you there a little bit because you've only just started floating. So don't stress out too crazily about this, but just know that if you see this happen, right, where you have an item and you're floating it up, right? Okay. And you get it to a little bit of a height and you exit out of your menu and it pops back down to the ground like that, but you did see it float upward, right? You're on the right track. It's just you need to push it a little bit higher, okay? So here, what we're looking for, right, is you want to go float up, go back to inventory, load it again, right? Okay, maybe I get it up to about there. Oop, messed that one up. There we go, okay? Now, if I exit out the menu, the table stays, okay? Because I've hit the minimum float height requirement. This is the part where I plug. If you start doing a lot of floating, you're gonna run into the minimum float height thing. And the best resource that I can possibly recommend is FFXIV's minimum float height guide. Okay, so if you've never heard of them, there's a group called HGXIV. That's like all the letters, HGXIV. If you go to hgxiv.com, that's their website. They have a Discord server, which is phenomenal. It's a wonderful place for housing resources and to get help with housing. They actually have a much more in-depth written guide on both their website and a Google Doc that goes into all of these complexities of housing and how all these mechanics work even. So if you are getting into housing, I highly recommend you go check them out and give them a follow, and see what all the resources and materials they have. And they're just really great people creating some really phenomenal stuff for the community. So yes, right there in the chat here, Ray has linked the Google Doc in which they have painstakingly gone through and figured out the minimum float height requirement for every item in the game, except for I think the Mog Station items, which is, you know, understandable. Those are for actual money. But all of the items that are available just in the game, base game, they've figured out the minimum float height for all of them and documented in this document. So as you get into housing, you may want to bookmark this because this is going to be a lifesaver for you. It tells you, oh, this many Riviera or this many wooden lofts high, the item has to be off the ground in order for it to stick in place. Okay. So again, for the basics of this thing, I'm not going to get super crazy about that and like try to super hammer home all the little nuances of that. But again, you know, TLDR, you can float items off the ground, but you're going to need to get them to a certain height in order for them to even be able to stay floated off the ground. Okay. Now, once you have an item that has met the minimum float height requirement and you want to freeze it in place, something extremely important is in order to quote unquote lock it in place, like keep the item frozen there, you need to rotate it. Okay. After it's been floated to whatever height that you want it to. When I say rotated, what I mean is you go to your rotate tool, right? Go and do this specifically. Go to the rotate tool, right? Make sure you have the item selected, so it should be all highlighted in orange. And what you're gonna do is on mouse and keyboard, all you need to do is just click it twice, right? So make sure that you can clearly select it, click again. Okay, did you see how it selected the item and it got the rotate tool and then it undid it, right? So click, okay? Okay, so this is extremely important because this is what allows you to leave the building and have the item still stay floated like that. If you do not rotate the item and you leave the building, it will fall back to the floor even if you've hit the minimum float height requirement. I will demonstrate this. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to have two tables, okay? And I'm going to float both of them. Let me do it like this. Okay. Okay, so now I have my two tables that are floated up off the ground, right? I can leave the housing menu and they stay floated, so they've met the minimum float height requirement. Now, I'm only going to rotate one of them, okay? So click, right? Rotate tool, found the item, this one on the right-hand side, clicked it once and clicked it again. It's useful to just like, once you have it in place here, right? Just don't move your mouse in between the two clicks. Just freeze your hand in position, click, okay? As long as you see the little arrow the little arrows appear, right? Click, see how the little like targeting thing and then also the little rotate tool symbol is there. Okay, so you've selected it, then click it again, it goes away. Okay, so now you've locked it in place. Okay, so now if I get out of the housing menu, they're still floated there, right? Okay, running around, awesome, still floated. If I leave, I'll go to the lobby, and then I'll come back in. Okay, so I left, go back inside, and we look at our tables, and here we go. The one that I rotated is frozen in the air still, the other one is not. Okay? So, in some cases, that might be what you want, but a lot of the time, if you float a bunch of stuff and you leave the house and you think you rotated stuff and you come back and something fell to the ground, it's probably because you didn't rotate it. So it's very important. Always remember, rotate, rotate, rotate after you float. Okay? And something to be aware of, it's the rotate locks it wherever it is when you rotate it. And when I'm saying that because you override the previous rotate, okay? So what that means is, right now it's frozen here, right? If I go up here, right? And I have it higher, right? If I rotate it up here now, if I was to leave and come back, it's gonna stay frozen up here now, right? It's not gonna respect where it was before. On the other side, right? If I have it locked here and I move it around, right? So I move it even higher, right? And now I don't rotate it though, right? When I leave the house and I come back, it's gonna snap back down to the sort of middle height. Okay, so the rotate is always thinking about wherever you last rotated, the position it was at when you last rotated it. This is useful if you start getting like more into the layering stuff, because sometimes you'll want to freeze certain items in their position, and then you'll need to move them out of the way in order to put some other stuff there. But then as long as you don't rotate them, if you leave the house and you come back, they'll snap back down to that save spot, okay? I think that will be something we kind of look at a bit more on Wednesday when we go into the bit more advanced, the advanced stuff of housing. So don't worry too much about that. I think the biggest thing right now for anybody who's just getting started is sort of understanding how this basic float works, because this is your bread and butter. Almost everything that you're doing with housing that's in the more kind of complex layering stuff is going to involve this bread and butter, float anything off the ground glitch. Okay, so just quick recap of make sure you understand whatever item you're trying to float, right? Make sure you know where its center point is and sort of where the base of it is. Make sure then that when you use your item to float it, you are intersecting that the float item is going to hit that middle point. It's going to intersect with both the base and the middle point of the item, right? And then it'll pop up. Then you need to make sure that you've hit the minimum float height requirement, or else it will pop back down like you just saw it do there, okay? And then whenever you have it floated to whatever height that you want, you're going to want to come in here, grab the rotate tool, and click twice on the item after you have it kind of highlighted like this. Click, click. Okay, and that will freeze it in place. And you can freeze multiple items at the same time. So if I floated 10 tables here, I would have to individually click all of them, okay? And it will save the state of wherever each of those are individually, right? So I do this one, I go and I do some stuff over here or whatever, and then I come back and I float this, and then I rotate it separately, and it'll freeze it separately, okay? If I was to have 10 tables in a row, I would need to click, 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 10 different double clicks to get them all locked in place, and then I could leave the building, okay? So far, is that making sense to everybody? Just kind of giving a check in here. Yeah, okay. Everybody's been able to follow along, figure this out so far. Okay. Okay, so with that basic bread and butter float, I mean, that alone will get you so far. But there are a few more other tricks that are sort of your other go-to tools as well. Okay, so now we are going to use the keybinds that we set earlier. Okay. So, if you recall, what we had was we set keybinds, right, for the display subcommand and confirm. Okay, this is gonna come back now. Remember what those were, find them on your keyboard, figure out what they are. Okay, so what is this and why do we need it? Okay, so what this is you're placing items, this time from storage, not your inventory, right? So this time, this is how you can place items in areas that they're normally not allowed to just be placed. That maybe doesn't make a ton of sense when I just state it, but let me show you, and I think it will make much more sense. Okay, so if I take this white screen, right? Which, by the way, you can buy these at the NPC vendor here, if you want to follow along. Really, you can do this with a bunch of different items, but I'm just going to do with white screens. But this is more just for demonstration, so I'm not going to stress too much about like this. If you wanted to come in here, go to the partition, you could get where are they? There it is, white screen. Okay. So the Hakonin that we bought earlier, white screen. And I'm just going to use 2 of them to demonstrate this point. So let's just say I want to put this white screen down. A lot of people use this white screen for things like a photo studio, which is something we will actually be exploring in the coming weeks. I'm going to be doing a breakdown of how to do some basics, like basic photo studio setup. But that's for another time. So for now, though, we have this white screen, okay? Moving it around, you see it's orange, it's orange, it's orange. So here's the thing. Let's just say that I want to push this thing into the wall, right? For whatever reason, okay? At a certain point, though, it turns purple here, and I can't actually get it closer to the wall, okay? Right? So, like, that's as close as I can get it to the wall, right? And that's just, there's no fancy technique there. That was just me simply trying to place the item down as the game lets me, right? Orange is go, purple means no, okay? So now, here's the thing where the keybind comes in place. Something that we can do is do a storage placement where, watch my character, right? So see how my character is very close to the wall here? By doing this, and we have this display preview turned on, so that way when we click on an item that's in our storage, right, see storeroom, white screen, I have a second white screen here. I can position it, and do you see how, as I'm moving my character close to the wall, the white screen is able to get closer to the wall than before? It's still purple though, right? But you can't get super close, but okay, so you see how it's much closer into the wall here? Okay. Really quick, I'm gonna do the command. It's just so I can show you what the end result is here. Okay, so do you see how I was able to place this much closer, like closer to the wall? In this case, it's this much, but there are other items that this is much more dramatic. But do you see how I couldn't normally place the item that close, but now I was able to, right? So the reason I was able to do that is because I did the place from storage, right? And the way that works is you have your item. If you know, this is a useful tip here. If you know how to toggle between run and walk, or if you want to go into your keybinds and set a button that lets you switch between run and walk, this can be useful for this. Actually, let me go here. So, here we go. Where is it? Oh yeah, here we go. So if you go into keybinds and movement, there is a thing here that's toggle between run and walk. I highly recommend figuring out a button for this. Add this button as a hotkey or keybind. Okay. So for me, it's end. Right. So running, toggle the button on, walking. Okay. This is useful because I want to get really close to the wall and have a lot of control over this. So when I'm in my storage, I have my item, right? Normally, the item would be only able to place about there, maybe, right? Which is a little bit off from the wall. But if I just walk toward the wall, I'm just tapping my arrow keys, getting me a little bit closer to the wall, and I keep kind of hitting this. Do you see how this arrow, this is the center point. Do you see how it got pushed into the wall, right? I was able to get it much closer. You see how it's going closer and closer and closer to the wall? And at some point, it will say you can't do this. But there is a middle point, or like a, here, like see? You can get it very, very close to the wall, right? This works, by the way, both, it's like based off of where your character is and the position of the camera. So you can both use the walking thing I just did, where you're just like sort of nudging your character closer and closer to the wall, but you can also just nudge the camera a little bit, right? So if I try to drop it here, and then I move the camera a little bit over, and I click it again, how it moved a little bit there. Yeah, so you have to figure out what works best for you, but by doing that, you can get this closer and closer to the wall. Now, once it's here, once you have it in a position that you like it really close to the wall, well, let me get it. There you go, okay? The keybinds, the places, the display subcommand confirm. Find your 2 keys, and what you're going to be doing is you click the display subcommand key, right? You might have to click it twice if this window doesn't appear right away. Do you see this window here? Right? This place, return inventory, search for item, link, right? You want to click, again, either once or twice to get that window to display. The little hand thing should be looking at the place, right? And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hit confirm and then escape. Okay? And this is a similar timing to the float thing. Actually, I think you might even... wait, let me just make sure. Can you do just the confirm? Yeah, in fact, you don't even have to escape. You can just hit confirm. The big thing here, though, is that it allows you to place items in places that you normally wouldn't. Okay? I realized, I think I might have a better example than this. Because this is, so here, you can see it happening. Right? This is as close as we could get before. This is as close as we could get after, right? Something much more dramatic, though, is like this. So that this is a big pond, right? Now, do you see how far from the wall the pond is? Normally right here. So like if I was trying to place this item down on the ground, the closest I could get it to the wall is that, right? Which is pretty far from the wall. I mean, you know, so if the pond is facing this way, right? The closest I can get to the wall, it's not even completely touching the wall, right? It's actually a little bit of ways away from the wall. You see this? Okay. So now though, if I put this in my storage, okay, and I'm gonna do the thing we just talked about, I'm gonna do the storage placement. Okay, so now, do you see how much closer I am to the wall? Right? So now, if I'm like this, right, and I do the storage thing, so I go to my display subcommand key, right? The little window pops up, and then I'm gonna do confirm. Okay. Now, do you see how much closer this is to the wall? If I rotate this, look at that. Half the pond is hidden in the wall, right? So this is the big, this is a much more dramatic difference, right? Where before we couldn't even have any part of the pond really touching the wall if we had it horizontally going like this. And now we can hide almost half the pond in the wall using this storage placement. So really, really useful. And this becomes, extremely useful for ponds, for hiding parts of bookshelves, for cabinets and everything. You will find yourself probably using this one a lot. Was anyone who's following along, were you guys able to duplicate that? Also, hello, Celeste. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you again. Been a while. And dank flatulence. Oh, thank you for that follow, and welcome to the stream. Okay, so there we go. I think hopefully everyone's been able to follow along so far with those. So that was placing from storage. There's actually a second variation for this placing on storage that also is very useful. So in addition to getting this item closer to the wall, there's a second version that utilizes that display subcommand and place. So if you pull out your round wooden loft, right? It might be here on the wall. I don't know where you left it, but if you have your wooden loft, right? And you just pick it up, it's in your inventory, right? Or I mean, honestly, even if it's in your storage, it doesn't really matter at the moment. The point here is move it along the wall, and you're gonna find that, for example, I can't put it really low to the ground here, right? Like it's orange here, and I could naturally place it here, but it won't let me here. Unable to place item. But if we do that same thing that we just did when we were shoving things into the wall, right? If we do display, sorry, I just realized this needs to be in my storeroom. Wooden loft in my storeroom. Okay. Wooden loft in my storeroom. Hit the display subcommand menu. Confirm. And now the item can be placed much lower, or it can be placed in an area that would normally not allow us to place it. So if you ever see someone do something like this, right, where they have like maybe, I keep forgetting, it needs to be in storeroom. Store it, grab it out, pick it up. There we go, see? So now you might have seen people do this, right? Where they have like some steps or something that are coming up. And they maybe put like a little bed that's a bit lofted up here. That is how they're doing that. Or it's one of the ways you can do that. Okay? So, does that make sense to everybody who's following along? It's exactly the same set of commands that we did to push these into the wall. Basically, make sure the item is in storage, not your inventory, and then you pull the item out. If it's the case of like a wall item, then you can actually move it around and everything. But if it's a floor furnishing, you're going to need to use your character and your camera position to drop it in place. So this will not work if you have picked up the item. You really need to move your character and have the item set down in front. Okay, right. Let me again illustrate this. Right. This white screen is in my storeroom, right? If I move it like this, I'm getting it to just place. This is the display preview, right? So when I click it, it just pops down in front of me, right? So as long as it's just popped down in front of me, I can do the trick where I freeze it in place like that, okay? But if I pop it down and then I'm like, oh, it should be really like a little over this way, and I pick it up, okay? And then I try to do the same thing, Well, actually, in that case, it worked. I think it may not work exactly the same. If you put it into certain positions, it will be fine. But if you're doing something like putting it really, really close to the wall, you really might have some trouble with that. So I'd be careful about picking stuff up. I would use some sort of the walk-in and nudging your camera. But hey, you know, I'm sometimes don't know exactly all the perfect secrets either. So there you go. I guess sometimes you can pick it up and move it around. Cool. Okay. So we have now shown how to then now place escape from storage, or place from storage rather. Something to point out here is in a house, this is also how you can place items on stairwells, as well as like on the banisters around the stairs, is you can use this place from storage method, because it will not normally allow you to place many items like on the actual stairwell. But if you've seen some people do some fancy stuff on the stairwells, they're using this probably. Also, even after you push something on the wall, you can still float it up off the ground. Okay, so you just gotta know where the center point is. But even after it's kind of pushed, you could still push it up. So once it's set in place, it could be floated. So for example, this pond, right? Now that it's here, and it's pushed into the wall, right? We saw that it was, it's half sunk into the wall. When we're floating, remember, it's got to come from inventory. So inventory. And there we go, right? There we go. We now have a floated pond that is half sunk into the wall, right? Which you might need for, I don't know, whatever you're building. Maybe you want this rock overhang on top of your bar or something, right? Who knows? But yeah, that is how you combine those two things together. And the final thing, and this one is much simpler, is how to freeze tabletop and wall-mounted items in place. So what we just showed was sort of forcing items to float or push in or out of things, right? This next one is you just need to position whatever item, tabletop or wall-mounted item, you need to just get it into position, and then you're going to freeze it in place. And it's super simple, actually. So I told you earlier to buy a Glade Lantern. Hopefully you still have that with you, and you have your table. You could, if the table's floated off the ground, you can pull it back and put it on the ground. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure you have a table in front of you and you have your Glade Lantern. Put the Glade Lantern on the table. Okay, so now the Glade Lantern is off the ground, right? And it's sitting on the table. Now, if you were to try to pick up the table, right? The Glade Lantern would go with it. It's attached. Okay. But what if I want the Glade Lantern to float right there where it is? Okay, so let's just see I figured out the position that I want it. Okay, so all you got to do to get this Glade Lantern detached from this table, and it'll freeze in place right there, is the grid snap button here, and there's this toggle counter surface placement on off, right? You're going to turn this off. Okay, initially it was on because otherwise you wouldn't be able to place it on the table here, right? Having this on allows you to place it on things. So instead of just on the ground, it naturally goes up on top of the table, right? Now turn this off. Counter placement disabled. Okay. Now, here's the important part. With counter surface placement off, you're gonna just pick up the item that you want to freeze in place. Okay, so in this case, it's the glare lantern. Pick it up. Doesn't matter where you have it positioned here, but all you gotta do is hit escape. Okay, and the item should snap back into place. Okay, so again, what we did there was you just picked it up off the table, and without placing it anywhere, it's just you're holding on to it, and you hit escape, it should snap back into position, and now if you move the table away, the tabletop item should be frozen in place. You see that? And in this particular case, you do not need to rotate this. It is just frozen in place. Okay. Now this same thing works for wall-mounted items. So here I have my window, right? I'm gonna need to turn counter surface placement on again just to get the window placed. But for example, let's just say I was creating a fake wall right here, right? And I wanted my fake windows to, I wanted a bunch of fake windows all along here, right? What I could do is this, right? Get them in position. Let's just say this position, this is the place I want them to be, okay? Turn counter surface placement off, pick up the item, hit escape, snaps back into position, and now I move away, stage panel, and my window is floating right where I left it. See, both the items are floated there, right? You can walk through them. They're not gonna go anywhere, okay? There they are, they're frozen in place. And this works, like, I mean, it's just super easy to utilize this to position these things all over the place. But something to be aware of is that items that are tabletop and wall mounted have a snap ability where they want to stick onto something. So something you need to be careful of if you start using this sort of freeze wall and table mounted items in place, if you start using this a lot, something you're gonna need to be aware of is that these are gonna want to find a surface to reattach to. Now, what do I mean by that? Just so you see how like the window's just floating here and it's frozen, and so nothing's happening. It's not gonna go anywhere. If I leave the building and I come back, nothing's gonna happen. However, let's just say that I'm working on floating this table or something over here, or for whatever reason, and I put a wall, right? And I put a wall, for whatever reason, I'm trying to float this table and I plop this thing down near here. I'm gonna use it to float this table, right? So the thing is, while I still have the housing menu open, this is fine, nothing happened, the window's still there. But if this is close enough to the window, in a position that it would naturally adhere or be able to get stuck to it, if I leave the housing menu, did you see the window snap backward and now it's attached to the stage panel? See how it's attached again? So now my floated position is all messed up, right? I had it maybe here. Okay, let's show it again. Window is frozen in place, right? And then I'm floating, la 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 la, you know, I'm building something, something, something. And then I accidentally, you know, then I'm not thinking about this. This is maybe I can't even see this very well. But I place a stage panel here, close by this thing, and wham, the window snaps backward and is now out of position, okay? So this is, there are workarounds for this and ways to kind of help alleviate this problem, but it's something that you will have to sort of mentally maybe figure out as you're building. So this might be a reason why you put your windows in last, or why you put some of these tabletop items and wall-mounted items, you may want to try to put them in last in your build, right? So when I'm saying this, I mean, for example, let's just say, right, let's just say I want to make a fake wall, right? Or something, right? Or, oh, these are actually not the best for that. I just realized. Here we go. Okay. Right, so let's just say we're trying to make some kind of a fake wall, right? So you might do something, people do this, you know, take a cabinet, flip it around, boom. It's a clear, clean surface like this, right? So you got this fake wall, right? So for example, you might do something like this. Right, and you have this fake wall that looks like maybe this or something, right? And then you say, oh, I want to put a little window in between here, right? If you do a bunch of complex layering where you're putting tables and you're putting multiple cabinets together, you may want to wait till the very end. And then once you have the walls in place, you leave this little slot knowing that the window is going to go here. And then at the very end, you come in and you put the window, right? So let's just say I want it like that. Okay, I don't know, maybe this looks really weird, but like, for whatever reason, let's just say I wanted this look, right? Here we go. Counter surface placement off. My window is in position now. Freeze it in place. Move the stage panel away. And now I have my fake wall with my window in position, right? So I would recommend that if you're building, you think about your layering like this, where you leave a space, a pocket, you know, where you will then put your windows or put your lights and stuff because of the snapping thing. And some items will snap really, really far. Tabletop items are also notorious for this, where so you can do something like this. I'm just gonna move this stuff out of the way, so don't worry. Okay, so let's just say I put this light on the loft, right? And because I want the light to be floated really high up. Maybe like, let's just say I'm using a fake loft here, and I wanted a light to be hanging off from the top here, right? So the light is currently attached to this, and I'm gonna disconnect it. Counter surface placement off, pick it up, let go, okay? Now I'm just gonna grab this whole thing and move it away. Okay, so now I have a light that's hanging from the ceiling, right? Or it looks like it's hanging from the ceiling. And that's great, and it's gonna be stuck like that, and that's wonderful. However, if I put a table underneath it, so I'm not 100% sure if this particular item will do this, but if you put a table underneath this, right? This item, the tabletop items are looking for tabletop surfaces to adhere to. And so if I leave the menu and come back, it is now actually attached to this light that is floated up. So do you see how that happened, where previously this light was just hanging out here doing its own thing, completely disconnected from everything, right? It was on here, it got disconnected. Now I put this table there, it was still separate entities, right? But then I left the housing menu, which allowed it to do a little search and adhere to this. And now they're actually stuck together. And if I move this table, the light comes with it in its floated position, right? So this actually could be really useful depending if that works for your build. Like, for example, maybe I realize, oh shoot, like it looks okay there, but I really want it on the corner. So you could put a table below that, snap it to the table, and then pick up the table with the light now and move it over here, right? And you'd kind of like have it already sitting in position, already, maybe you had 5 lights in a row and you wanted to make sure they're all on the same height. This way, by snapping it to this table, it actually wouldn't change the height because it's just changing its XY position, right? And then whenever you want to disconnect it though, you just come back, make sure the counter surface placement is off, and do the same thing, and you can re-disconnect it. So the tricky thing though is that because, did you see how how big a gap there was where you put this and it adhered with the light. So if you start getting more complex with your housing, and you'll have, you know, 20 lights in a ceiling and maybe floated fish tank and some other stuff, you're gonna get some scenarios where you're working with the tables or something below, and one of these items is gonna snap to this and you're not gonna realize it. And just something to be aware of. If you randomly are building and all of a sudden it says like, you cannot remove this table because something's attached to it, it's probably because it picked up some kind of other item here, right? What I mean by that is, so right now, if I put this table here and I say I want to move it to storeroom, I can just move it to the storeroom, okay? There it is, okay, there it is again, right? And then I can put it back. Now, if I have it near this light and we're gonna stick it to the table again. Okay, so now the light is attached to the table again, right? If I try to move the table to my storeroom and the light is still attached, it'll say another furnishing has been placed on that item. So you actually cannot remove this, okay? Because even if you couldn't see this light, like let's just imagine it's like this, right? And it's actually up here, right? You maybe wanted just a little bit of the light hanging out here. This is like this is a very feasible thing, right? You have a loft and you want just a tiny little dome light. Okay, great. You can like have that floating there, right? But if you then put a table and you're doing something with the dining room below, you might accidentally grab onto the little light and then you won't even be able to see that it's attached, right? Like here, if I was moving this, I wouldn't be able to know that above my fake ceiling here is the light going with it. So just know that if that happens, you might either want to figure out what is attached and then disconnect it again, right? So you could use the counter surface thing. But if you ever get in this situation where by accident or on purpose, you've put something, you have something attached and you move it into position, and for some reason you can't click the actual item to do the counter surface placement disconnect. Another way to get it to disconnect is you put an item, literally any item, right? And you place it somewhere in the house. So just to show, these two are connected, right? And then let's just say, oh, it got pushed into my ceiling somehow, and I'm like trying to disconnect these two, and I can't grab that light for some reason. Okay, so what I can do is take an item from anywhere, put it down somewhere, and now find it in the housing menu in placed items. Go find that item. So in this case, it's the antique wall shelf, and I'm going to store or remove it. Either one works. Okay, so let's just say I'm storing it. Store. Now, right after I've stored it, the lamp is disconnected from the table. In fact, everything's disconnected. So if you ever run into that, this is a way to help disconnect objects that have gotten stuck together, even if you can't see them. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Was everyone able to replicate that if they were trying it along? Or at least kind of understand the general concept for them to try to do it later? Oh yeah, it's happened to you, Selena? Yeah, yeah. Once you start doing the, lofting stuff and layering a bunch of things together, you're undoubtedly going to come across this scenario where you will pick up a table and try to put it away or move it somewhere, and you're going to accidentally grab a whole bunch of crap that's floated above it. So this is like the nice thing about tabletop and wall-mounted items is they're super easy to place. Like they're super easy to position compared to floating stuff. But the other downside to that though is that they have that snappiness where they'll snap to stage panels and walls or tables and stuff, and that can be kind of frustrating. Some of these things you can actually use to your advantage. So even though these aspects can be very frustrating, sometimes they actually are the exact tool that you need. So like I just explained, where maybe I had 4 lights all hanging here, and one of them was slightly misaligned, but I didn't want to accidentally put it at the wrong height again. I wanted to make sure they're all aligned. You could attach one of them to like a table or something and then kind of reposition it. Right? Or here's another thing that may come up, is sometimes we mentioned that you can use the storage placement and stuff to place sometimes objects where they're not supposed to be, right? So sometimes you'll have like an object that, again, is perfectly aligned. Maybe you put it up here or something. Maybe I put them in the purple or basically wherever. It could be using the storage placement thing. I guess it really doesn't really matter. But the main thing is here. Let's say I have these 2 things here, and I think, oh shoot, I actually don't really want them there. Right? Maybe this is a better example. Hold on, I am sorry. Ugh. Okay, sorry. Let's try this again. Right. Let's just say that I've perfectly positioned this so that it's just perfectly aligned to here, right? And then I freeze it in place, right? So like that the little trim here is very nicely, perfectly aligned to here, right? I freeze this in place, but then I realize later, oh, actually, I actually want the little line here too, or I want to nudge this over or something for some reason, right? So, but it's already perfect on this axis, right? It's already perfect along here. So what I can do is I can intentionally get it to snap by going like this, pulling it like that, and it'll reattach, and now I can just go nudge it over to maybe here, and then disconnect it again, right? So like in that case, it might be useful to, it will maybe grab all 10 of your windows, put them on the stage panel, and you can move the whole collection of them somewhere else. So again, it's kind of just like, yeah, it's kind of both a help and a hindrance, depending on how you're utilizing stuff, what you're doing. Oh, okay. So Selena, you're asking, so only caught the last half, so place thing on a wall to disconnect the thing? So it doesn't have to be on a wall, it's just... Here, let me show you again. Okay, so... Okay, so if I have a table, right, and let's see if it's attached. Okay, so I'm in this scenario, right, where I have an item that's a tabletop item, right, that's attached to a table. Or this could be the same thing for a window or something, right? And for some reason, I am not able to pick up the item to just disconnect it, right? One way to disconnect it would be like that. That was if I could click the item, right? But if I could not click the item, for example, you might do this. So some people do this in order to light their ceilings or light their rooms. So it's a little hard to see right now, but if I turn this light all the way down, right? See the glade lantern here, right? How it's emitting light? Even if I cover this up, the light is still there, right? So if I was to use this, I would now have what looks almost like hidden recessed light, right? but you cannot actually see the Glade Lantern anywhere, right? So it's barely visible there, but you can't really click it, right? In fact, if I nudge it a little bit more, there, you can't see it at all. But the light is still emitting from the lantern, right? Now, how did I get that into position is because I was, moving this around, right? Okay, perfect. People do this all the time. They want lighting in their ceiling. But now how do I disconnect the lamp from the table, right? All you have to do is place any item anywhere. It doesn't have to be the wall. It could be wherever you want, right? So I can put a bed if I want, right? So once I have an item placed, what I have to do is I find it in my housing menu under placed, and then I store it. Okay? And now it's disconnected. Now the lamp is disconnected and it's floating there, and the table's over here, right? Does that make sense? And yeah, like, so this is actually like a very common use case where if you don't particularly want to see light, but you want the effect of lights, things like Glade Lanterns are really good for this because of the way they're coded in, they don't actually calculate like the light emitting from the lantern. So they just illuminate the area around them, regardless if they're hidden in something. So this is really great for stuff like this, where, yeah, you want this recessed light, right? That looks like there must be, oh, there's like an LED strip or something hidden underneath the wall here that's shooting the light down on the wall. Perfect for that. And it lights up the whole space, right? Otherwise, it would look like this. See the difference? Awesome. Okay, cool. Good, good. Glad that helped clarify for you as well, Crodem. Was there any other part of anything that I've explained so far that anybody wants me to go back to or reiterate? Okay, I'll give people a moment there to ask if they have any questions or want me to clarify something further. I mentioned at the very, very start of this that if you can do everything that I just did with NPC vendor items only, but you may want to spend a little bit more or learn crafting and get some other variations of these items, which previously these were the items that everybody used anyway, but now we have NPC vendor alternatives. But instead of, let me just clean this place up a bit really quick. Okay. Right, so instead of, this is the vendor one, the wooden round loft, or the round wooden loft, I should say. This is the crafted one, just the wooden loft, okay? So you might want to go with the crafted one. They do exactly the same thing, but one is square and one is circular. And I personally think it's probably easier to visualize and make sure, visualize like where the loft is hitting, like if it's hitting over the midpoint of an item, if you're trying to hit the midpoint, if it's square, right? This feels a little bit easier to conceptually understand what the bounds of this item is, versus with this one, because of the rounded corners and stuff, it might be a little bit hard to conceptualize like what counts as hitting an object, right? And how to like maneuver this. So that's one of the reasons why I would say you may want to use the square one. Okay. And then when it comes to the, where did it go? The antique wall shelf. Okay, so the other one is this. So antique wall shelf. This is the NPC vendor item, right? And the one that people had traditionally used was this, the Riviera wall shelf. Okay. And they do the same thing. They functionally are the same tool, but you may prefer the appearance or the size of one of them or something. But additionally, a big difference is that you can die the Riviera wall shelf. And this is not something that everybody does. Like, I actually have never done this personally, but I know Sint from FFXIV was a big proponent of doing this, where he dyes a bunch of his wall shelves bright pink that he uses as tools to build. And the reason for that is when you're doing really crazy complex layering, sometimes as you're using some of these tools, it can be kind of difficult to see what is the item that you're actually using for the build and what is just the tool that you're using to float. If you can imagine like a really complex build where there's 50 items in this corner and I'm trying to just like float some tiny little thing here, then this one of these items might get kind of lost in all of the other items. But if you dye all your tools, let's just say like that, the brightest, most fluorescent pink, then they kind of can pop out to you. And unfortunately, you cannot dye the antique wall shelf. So I'd say that's like one potential reason you may want to get a Riviera wall shelf, is if you find that easier, you may want to get the dyeable version, basically. And yeah, but the NPC vendor items will absolutely get you through, so there's no need to get these other ones. And the final one that I had listed is this is the obvious one that everybody uses, the stage panel. You can use it for everything. It's extremely versatile. But you may also want to pick yourself up one of these, this wood slat partition, because it does pretty much everything that the stage panel does, but it has the added benefits of that you can attach things to both sides of it. This is actually a good and a bad thing. This could be a problem if things are snapping, but you can attach things to either side of this wood slat partition. But most importantly, it's a much thinner profile, right? So it's much like more easy to maneuver this around in a build because it's a much smaller footprint. Like, this is really big, right? This is very clunky, especially the fact that all of this, you might use this for design elements, but for as a toolkit, you can't actually use any of this side. And you kind of have to like get this stuff out of the way if you're doing more complex stuff. But this is really, really easy to maneuver, like just, positioned exactly where you want it. It's very easy to see where it is. It doesn't block your camera, right? If I'm using this, it kind of like obstructs a whole bunch of stuff. So this has a really nice footprint, plus you can actually see through it, right? So if you were doing this, right? Here's our window example again, right? We had a fake wall, right? And we left a cutout where we're going to put the window in, right? If you were to take, where'd the window go? If you were to take our window, right, and you had it on the stage panel, right, it's kind of big and bulky and it might be difficult to see where it's going. Also, something people do with windows. Okay, so windows, they shine out light, right? Like when it's light outside, there'll be light rays coming out the window. But the light rays actually only come out the normal side of the window, the one direction. So the back side of this window will not shine light. So there will be rays coming out from this side, right? Like coming out this way. But this side of the window looks exactly identical. It's still got the cracks and everything, but no light is going to come out of this. But the whole window will glow when it's light outside. So some people want that, right? They don't want all those big sunbeams to be coming into their home. So they'll flip it around. They'll flip the window around here. And then they'll disconnect this. Okay? And then now the window will only illuminate, but none of the rays will come through the window. But do you see here how like this is obstructing a lot of my view, right? Like with the stage panel when I'm doing this. So potentially a nice way to do this might instead be you take your wood slat partition and you do it with the wood slat partition instead. Right? Because look how much nicer that is to maneuver around, right? I can see exactly where I'm positioning it, right? No part of this is obstructed, right? See how much like easier that is to work with? Let's say I want it like that, right? And then disconnect. Exactly the same way, you know, there it is. Oh, kind of messed it up a little bit, but there we go. Right, like, and there you go. The window is flipped backwards, and so the light rays will not shine through. And then, yeah, it was easier to maneuver. And again, you could dye this as well. You could dye this bright pink if you wanted. So that's the options that I had provided there, where if you have a bit of extra money, I do recommend picking up at least one of those other alternative things. So picking up a wooden loft, a Riviera wall shelf, and then a wood slat partition. I think they're probably pretty cheap on the market board. I would say most of them are probably like maybe 25k gil or something. Yeah, shouldn't be too bad. And okay, I think that covers pretty much all of the main topics that I was going to go over today. Does anybody have any further questions or would like me to clarify anything else? Congratulations, by the way, for anyone who has now made it all the way through the stream and hopefully been able to follow along. You know everything that you need to know to get going with housing. This is pretty much everything that I use when I build. There are a few little tiny minor things that I use for specific stuff, but the vast majority of everything that I've ever built is this, just using the stuff that we just went over today. So awesome. Yeah, glad to hear it was helpful, Aramore. And for anybody who couldn't make it to the stream, like if you know friends or something who couldn't make it, I'm going to be putting up the VOD of this, the replay video on demand. I'll have that both up here on my Twitch channel right after the stream, and then I'm also porting all of the videos over to YouTube as well. And I've actually just now, as of today, linked in my YouTube channel here on Twitch. So if you look down below, there's actually a link to the channel. It is empty right now. At the time of this recording this, I do not have all the videos live because they are still some of them are still processing, and I need to just like clean up some of the like the description info and that kind of thing. But basically, my Twitch VODs cannot live on Twitch forever. They are starting to get old enough where they get deleted automatically. So yeah, all of the VODs from all my housing streams are going to be moved over to that YouTube channel that's linked here on my Twitch. So understand if you aren't ready to subscribe there yet, but if you'd like to watch all the other streams that I've done and or rewatch this one or any in the future, I recommend kind of bookmarking my YouTube channel. Give it a subscribe if you like, and I'm hoping by this week I'll at least have most of them all up and running on the YouTube. It might be a little bit crude. Some of the stuff might not look that polished, won't have like super beautiful thumbnails maybe or anything, but that's going to be like a great place where you can refer all your friends or bookmark for yourself if you enjoy these streams, and if you want to share them with anyone else or go back and revisit them, rewind them, you know, take notes or what have you. Oh, is that right? You can highlight on Twitch and it'll last forever. Does that mean you just have to highlight every single video? That slimologist. That being said, though, I mean, I actually would like to move them away from Twitch because I don't think Twitch is the best platform where they should live. It's very limited in what I can do with them on Twitch, and I think YouTube. I think they are much better served as at home on YouTube, where I also intend to start making some more like, I guess, edited tutorial videos. Right, this is very free form kind of. Follow along, off the cuff format, but I also plan to eventually do some, maybe more edited down walkthrough videos of some of my builds, or break it down videos, or I don't know, even maybe an explanation of upcoming projects, future plans, recordings of stuff. I'm not sure exactly all the stuff that I want to do with the YouTube channel, but it's going to be cool, so you don't want to miss it. So yeah, that's the main reason why I'm trying to start shifting over there. So yeah, I wanted to mention that in this video because in the future, if people listen to this, the recording of this, it will already be live, my YouTube channel, and there'll probably already be a whole bunch of videos over there. Hopefully, there'll be a lot of awesome content if you're watching this in the future. Hello, future viewers. And yeah, so to follow this up, what we did today was learn sort of the absolute basics of housing, but I do think that there are some other concepts that are a little bit more advanced for like people who have already kind of gotten the hang of floating and are already like getting interested in like how to do more complex layering and everything. So stuff kind of like in the vein of how we talked about flipping the window backward yet here, So I kind of wanted to take a second stream to go a little bit over that, as well as things like bed meta, which you may have heard. It's kind of like a running joke on our stream too, but it's actually also like a very, very useful tool. So that'll be this Wednesday. So the April 27th, we're going to, same time, same place, 4 to 6-ish p.m. PST, 7 to 9 EST. We're going to pick back up and do some more housing stuff. We're going to look at, some more advanced concepts. And maybe I'll also like share a couple more tips and tricks, and maybe we'll like also look at how to do like a basic float something on your garden wall or something, I'll have to kind of take a look through all of the housing things that you can do and pick out a couple things that I think would be really useful to a broad range of people. Cheese meta. No, I don't know what you're talking about, Selena. There's no cheese. For anybody who's new and joining, the cheese thing that Selena is mentioning, which I guess actually I realize you guys can't maybe see the I'll switch back over to the chat view here. Yeah, so what Selena's mentioning with the cheese meta thing is, as I mentioned very early on in the stream, a lot of housing is thinking of things as they are not, which is that you consider every object as from all angles and from all sides and from all bits and pieces and visibility levels. So something that looks like, for example, a cabinet, perhaps you will not use it as a cabinet, right? You'll use it as a wall, right? And the cheese racks is one of the things that I utilized a lot in one of my nightclub builds. So it's one of the running jokes that we have here is that it's all built out of cheese, because it kind of is in parts. So that'll be something fun that you guys will all, as you're getting started on your housing journeys, you'll come across that kind of thing. You'll find that there are many items in the game that are labeled one thing, and yet you never ever use them as that thing. And it's great. I think that's one of the most fun things about all of this, is the creativity of it all, you know? I think it's really awesome to see people utilizing that creative muscle to take something not at face value and to think outside the box and come up with new and creative ways to utilize what on the surface maybe seems like a bit of a limited palette of stuff. But the whole name of the game is, now that you have the basic tools, which we went over today, it's all about how are you going to put all the pieces together? How are you going to layer that? How are you going to make that window not just look like the stock window? How are you going to dress it up and frame it and light it? And I think that's the part where I will throw out my little tidbits of design kind of thinking to you. But in the end, part of the beauty is that you don't think like me, you know, that we are different. And that's like, I think the beautiful thing about it. You will look at that bookshelf and you will see something in it that I never saw. And you'll use it in ways that I never would have thought of. And I think that that's really beautiful. And I think that's really one of the things I really love about what people are doing in the Final Fantasy housing scene. Maybe worth mentioning that because people may be watching this and new to housing, that some great places to look up wonderful housing designs if you want some inspiration are, I mentioned FFXIV earlier, so they're a group that puts on, they used to put on a podcast, and they have a very thriving Discord server where people share their builds, and they help have like a housing help desk. So you can check out that. There's a lot of beautiful builds posted there. If you look at like the Twitter hashtags, there's honestly a ton of builds that are phenomenal on Twitter. I think it's probably the main place that people share builds. So look up some of the, you know, hashtag FFXIV housing, and you'll just get a whole list of awesome builds that people are doing. And the third one is Housing Snap, spelled exactly how you'd think, housingsnap, all one word, .com. And that's yet another place where people often share all their builds in like a website format. And all of those places are really great if you want to just take a look at what is possible, because it's basically infinite and there's endless inspiration out there. And I think that that's, I guess I want to say it could be also discouraging, again, if you see some builds and you think, oh my gosh, that's so complicated, it's so beautiful, I don't think I could ever do that. But really, I want to reinforce what I said at the beginning here, which is you can do it. Like everything that we just learned, anybody can do. It might take a little bit of time, you know, but like you can do this. And the difference between a very basic build and a very complicated build is often just a lot of time and a lot of trial and error. Just trying like a bunch of different things. And over time, the people who are quote unquote, like, I guess like veterans at this, right, is more like they've tried 10,000 ways to not make a kitchen. They've tried all these things and they've just discovered the few 25 types of cabinets or ways that like they like to make and it really works. And that's like really the name of the game, is just trying different stuff. So if you're new to housing, you know, really don't be discouraged by any of the really extravagant builds. You can get there too. You just need to keep at it and just try stuff. And don't compare like your build to someone else's build, especially if you're just getting started and they're like, you know, many years in. It's not a fair comparison and it doesn't help you grow. Just, you know, try to be a little better and try a few more things than you did yesterday. And like develop your own taste, right? Like that's part of the fun, is no one will look at it quite like you do. And I think that there's a real beauty to that. So yeah. Let's see. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm gonna start wrapping this up, I think, for today. So like I said, we will have another stream on Wednesday, same time, same place, 4 to 6 p.m. If you liked what you saw today, I love it if you drop me a follow if you haven't already. and not just here on Twitch, but also on Twitter, which is where I post my builds, as well as sort of always the latest news of like what's coming up with me, I think. Additionally, my YouTube channel now is going to be live, which where I'm going to post all the VODs and a bit more like, you know, edited and I guess, what do you call it? It's catered content, instead of like these streams, which are a little bit more freeform, off the cuff. So I'll be posting stuff in there. I have a Discord where a bunch of us always talk about housing and we share our builds, and we do some tours of people within our little community that I'm building. We have done already a tour of a bunch of people's builds within that. So if you want to have like a little bit of a welcoming space to talk about housing and learn some stuff and share ideas and share your work, come join my Discord. It's a great little community we got going. All of these things are linked down below here on my Twitch. I guess worth noting that I kind of exist in this space that's in between nightlife and housing. So I also have built 2 different nightclubs in Final Fantasy. One is called Ichi Nightclub, and the second one is called Prominence Nightclub. And I'm very proud of both of those builds, and most importantly, for Prominence, I own that club, and I DJ at it every other week. So this Wednesday, after the housing stream, will also be an opening of Prominence Nightclub. And here, I'm going to put the address here on screen. So for anybody of those of you who are interested, if you like electronic music, come check it out. I built this club, and it is my great honor and pleasure to perform there for you guys. So would love to have you come through. Because I'm kind of like someone who exists in both the nightlife and the housing scene, a lot of what I aim to do is to help kind of bridge those 2 worlds a little bit and kind of like show the awesome side of both to the other. So if you're someone who has just found me now from housing, but you like electronic music, or have ever kind of been curious about like what the nightlife scene is in Final Fantasy, come check it out. Come check out Prominence. There's more information about like Prominence and the nightlife stuff also in my Discord. If you, or on the flip side, if for whatever reason you find me from Prominence, then maybe you'll get a kick out of this video, and you'll enjoy learning some stuff about housing. But yeah, thank you everybody for coming out today. I hope you guys learned some stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was easy to follow. And if you had any troubles, that you're able to troubleshoot them. And if you do still have some issues even after this, come join my Discord, or ask in one of the places that I talked about here on the stream. There's a lot of really wonderful people who will help you out and will help you learn. So yeah, to anybody who is still here with us, thank you. I think that's going to be all for me today. I will see hopefully many of you again this coming Wednesday for the housing stream, and then later at night for the Prominence DJ set. Housing stream will be 4 to 6 p.m. PST, 7 to 9 p.m. EST. The Prominence DJ set will be 8 to 10 p.m. PST, which is 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. EST. So hopefully see you guys there. And yeah, enjoy housing, have fun. Hope you build some cool stuff. I can't wait to see, hopefully one day, what you guys all come up with. So until then though, yeah, I think that's gonna be it for me. Have a great rest of the night, everybody.